quickly. I had already had planned what I was going to do at all of the teachings, but then someone here brought up a wonderful question about some of the similarities and differences between Confucianism and Taoism and Buddhism. Who was that? Someone here did when we did the KWL charts. And then I had a couple of people afterwards come to me and say, oh, whoever, we are very interested in that. That's what I love about those KWL charts, is that wasn't part of the agenda at all, but about 4 or 5 people said they're really interested in it, so then I decided, well, let's actually do a lesson on this. And I don't know if all of you have gotten to really meet and talk to each other. It's a really wonderful group, and I know, I'm sorry.
Okay. I know that Katty and myself and Sharon and Master Jiro, I feel like we've had a really good chance to meet all of you individually, but I don't know if a lot of you have gotten to meet and talk to each other. So I really wanted to put some small group time in here where you could get in a small group of maybe 4 or 5 people, stay here or go work outside and actually work on some of these on your own. So I apologize for anyone who's Skyping. That you don't have anyone with you. Maybe you do, I don't know, to actually do that part. But if during that part you just want to do some independent work, that's fine too. So I figured for our schedule today, we can go ahead and do the KWL chart, and under the know section, you can just write out anything that you already know or think you know about Confucianism or Taoism. And then for the W, anything that you're really interested in knowing. And now there's a very good chance in your small group there may be someone who knows that. So that's the other additional huge benefit of getting to work in a small group. Plus I know a lot of you have so much knowledge, but you're more shy. And you don't raise your hand and talk, and I completely understand that, which is why a small group's even better, because you might feel more comfortable talking to someone. And then after your KWL chart, we'll share out. We'll give 25 minutes to do a small group discussion with your group. And I do have another rubric you can use if interested. And then we'll all come back together and kind of do a large group. I'm thinking that might help with the sleepiness too. Any questions? No. Oh wait, I don't want to show you this next screen yet. So just take a couple of minutes and write down under the K section anything that you know, or you're pretty confident you know, about Confucianism or Taoism, how it relates to Buddhism. And in the W section, anything you're very curious about. And we'll take about 4 or 5 minutes on that. Possibly the similarities, differences, which is why we do small groups. You all prove my point. No problem. No one has to share out if they don't want to. I will show you some of the things that I discovered. I didn't want to show anyone this ahead of time. Confucianism, was developed by Confucius, who is believed to have lived between 551 and 478 BCE. At the core value, it's considered a humanism, not so much of a religion, more as a philosophy or an ethical way of life. The focus is on virtue and ethics. And within that, there are 5 constants, focusing on altruism, moral discipline, social norms, knowledge, and integrity. So while we're talking about this, and while you look at the things you wrote down, you can start thinking about some of the similarities and differences this may have to Buddhism, or to Taoism if you have some previous knowledge. There are also 5 constant relationships. I talked about this a little bit earlier today during one of the questions and answers. You'll notice I have a capital letter. For example, parent and child, the P in parent is capitalized. It's very much considered a hierarchy, meaning that the leader or the person in charge is the one with the capital letter. I don't know how well I'm describing that. But for example, one of the relationships is between parent and child, and the parent is definitely the authority figure. Who gives the nurturing and love to the child, but the child is expected to respect and care for their parents. Second is husband and wife. Husband's being seen as the leader in the relationship. Elder and younger sibling. Elder and junior friend. And ruler and subject. And I was doing some research on this. I really need to do more though. They say now Confucianism, a lot of people do not say they're necessarily Confucianist, but it's considered Chinese traditional religion. Are you aware of this term? And quite a few people, I can't remember, I think it might have said like 6 million people attribute themselves to being Chinese traditional religion. And this is a blending of Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, and some other traditional rituals in a community. So very few people would call themselves Confucianists, but they may use some of those models. And it was originated in China and then spread to Korea, Taiwan, and Vietnam. And then a little bit of information on Confucius. He was a lifelong learner. He opened a school at 22 years old and was a great teacher. His early success led to the role as a minister of justice of Lu, that is where he's from. And there was some sort of conflict. I was finding different information that led him to leave and wander China. He was in his 50s when he left. And he wandered China for 12 years, giving advice and teachings and practical advice to rulers and lay people as well, and had a following as well. There were a group of people that actually followed him. And then after the 12 to 13 years, he returned to Lu and taught. So he was known as a great teacher. And anyone who's familiar with his works, there are some wonderful quotes that actually apply even today. It's amazing to me when you get those little calendars and things, how many quotes are directly attributed to him that still have such value so many years later. And then I put this part in only because when I was looking in the blog that we're doing, I noticed there were several comments curious about the role of women during these times. And I was able to find in a book talking about the role of women during Confucianism. So you may be interested in it, you may not, but I wanted to put that out there for whoever had put that question in the blog. There was definite gender roles for the family. There was the belief that if there's stability in the family, there's stability in society. So there were definite gender roles between the male and female in the family. A female was known to aspire to be a virtuous woman, and they were expected to uphold 3 subordinates, which was the father before marriage, husband after marriage, and son after husband died. It was interesting, if a husband died before a wife, the woman could not remarry. This was different. If the wife died before the husband could remarry. So that was one of the differences as well. What woman would want to get remarried? That's a joke. Although I do think that if anything happened to my husband, I think I'd be okay on my own. But that was one of the differences as well. Hearing this, you would think that women were completely subservient, but there was a huge regard and respect for women. It wasn't like when you think of the current day Taliban, the women who get beaten and different things that happening. It was not at all like that. The men were expected to be very respectful to their wives. So there was a reverence and a regard there, but it was very well known in that society that the woman was subservient to her husband. Make sense? Okay. Then, questions? Taoism, its emphasis is living in harmony with the Tao, which is known as the way or the path. Has anyone read that very famous book, the Tao Te Ching? I'm probably not saying that correctly. Short book. And it is very reasonably priced as well. You can quite often find those in the reduced section for like 99 cents or $1.99. Very interesting short book, but not completely easy to understand the first time. It's something I've had to read several times. In Taoism, it's known as the 3 treasures, which is compassion, moderation, and humility. And think again as well when you get into your small group how this can be similar or different to Confucianism or Buddhism. It emphasizes action through non-action, which I'm going to try to explain this as best as I can. How at times going with the flow per se is the best action to do instead of trying to change nature, change the environment, change your current situation. There's more of an acceptance. The other 2 emphases are on simplicity, living a very simple life without a lot of material possessions, as well as naturalness, and that directly refers to working on being unselfish, working on freeing yourself from desire. So I'm sure you guys are seeing some common threads as we talk about this. Most famous work, the Tao Te Ching, I'm probably not pronouncing that right, and I apologize, and it was written by Lao Tzu. Very interesting story of him as well, and there's some legendary accounts if anyone's interested. I really like history, so I don't like just learning about the philosophy, I like then learning about the person. He was a chief archivist in the royal court during the Zhou dynasty. He was also a revered sage, and in one of the readings I found, they said that actually Confucius had gone to him and had asked advice on different matters. I only read that in one site, so I don't know if that's positively for true, but I thought that was interesting. He as well abandoned courts, which we're kind of noticing common things with that as well, and he traveled as well. And the legendary account is, while he was traveling, a gatekeeper detained him and asked him to compose a treatise on the way and virtue. And he apparently reported orally the 2 sections which make up this very famous book, both of 5,000 words. And then according to the legend, he wandered off and was never seen again. Oh, okay, any questions? I wanted to give you that information just in case you get in your small group and you get very nervous because your K didn't have anything underneath it. And you were thinking, oh no, what are these people going to think about me? Well, now you have some information that you can pretend you knew ahead of time. So let me ask you this. I'm very excited that you guys are going to get into small groups because, again, there's so many wonderful people that I really feel you guys have not had much of an opportunity to get to know each other. But I do want to ask you if you're more comfortable on your own getting into groups of 4 or 5 people, or would you rather me divide you up? Any preference? Doesn't matter. Okay, so since we're all adults and we're all respectful, not like the high school children I used to work with, if you know groups of 4 or 5, if you notice that someone does not have a group or someone's just standing there, of course you can make your group larger rather than say, oh no, sorry, we already have our group. You can stay in here, you can go outside, wherever you would like to work in your group. And actually the focus of the group is within your group, knowing the pre-knowledge that you had and some of the information I just gave you, this is going to be more of a critical thinking, not so much factual. And in your group, start thinking critically, what are some of those similarities between these 3 philosophies? What are some of the differences? What are some theories on how they've blended together, or how maybe one religion has influenced another? And hopefully this can become a really good dialogue within your group. Questions on that at all, what your assignment is? The other thing I gave you, this goes back to my teaching. I just love having rubrics. For anyone who is interested, you certainly do not have to take one. Have you all seen a Venn diagram before? Venn diagram? Venn diagrams are wonderful because,
I'll just talk very loud. A Venn diagram is wonderful. Usually you'll see 2 of them. And with the 2, anything that's a difference, you put on that outside of the circle where they're not connected. But anywhere where there's a similarity, you put it in the inside where they are connected. It is a very easy way to classify how 2 things are alike and how 2 things are different. And it's a really wonderful tool to use with children and adults who are very black and white thinkers, who think, oh, dogs and cats have nothing in common. Or my mother-in-law and I have nothing in common. You can actually do one of these Venn diagrams to see, oh, okay, we do have some similarities and differences. It's a very good tool to use. This one happens to be a 3 Venn diagram, which can get tricky. Again, you do not have to use this. You'll notice there's 3 lines where you can put Buddhism, Confucianism, and Taoism. Anything that is specific just to the one philosophy, you would put on the outside where the circles don't connect. Does that make sense? Any of them that are true of 2 of them, you could put right here, here, and the very middle is true of all 3. Do you have to use this? No. But for some people who classify in pictures instead of all language, this could help. And the other thing you might want to do is within your group, maybe you have one person who's a recorder who records all this to bring back, and the rest of you can just converse. Okay? Any questions? Yay, everyone's so happy to get together. Trying to motivate. Okay, we will do this from, how about we do 20 minutes from now until 2 p.m. where you pick 4 or 5 people in your group. I always think you should get out of your comfort zone and pick people you might not know that well. So if you're here with your sister or brother, maybe it'll be fun to pick someone completely different. And then maybe have one person just be in charge and start the conversation of what similarities and differences they are. And this should just be a very critical thinking time. Less facts and more thinking about how these all apply to each other. And that can really help us as we go on talking about Buddhism in China. Okay? All right. You're up. Oh, of course. You know what I'll do? I'll sit them right here, and anyone who wants one, feel free to take them. And they're easy to make on your own, too. All right, 2 o'clock, I'll ring the bell. 5 minutes left. This is what I love about small groups. Do you guys remember how quiet everybody was? And I was asking questions. Now I can't get people to be quiet.
Watch out, don't get hurt.
Also, really wonderful way, I was talking to Katty while you all were working. If you do work with your own children or other children that are at that age where they just don't want to talk at all,
It's always good to not even start in a small group and just start in pairs. Because they're so worried about if they're going to say something that's wrong, which I'm sure you guys have felt that. When I'm sitting in here and one of the teachers says, "Who knows what this is?" I feel myself, I think I know what it is, but maybe I'm wrong. I'm not going to say anything. They'll all look at me and think, "You're a department teacher, you should know this." So I mean, I'm sure you guys have felt that as well. Well, teenagers especially feel it even stronger because they so want to be right all the time. So quite often I'll start in pairs and then have them get to know each other because I change up the pairs all the time, and then go to small groups. And it truly gets to the point where you don't have to do small groups anymore because they're all so comfortable with each other, which is I'm hoping what will happen with all of you, to where we won't even have to do small groups. You know, you'll just be raising your hand, asking a question, and not even be concerned if it's right or not. The other thing I wanted to bring, I just wanted to make a picture of a double Venn diagram, which is much easier to read, in case you want to do that at all. And if any of you in your group came up with a question that you don't know the answer to, like, hey, I wonder if all 3 of them believe this or not, what a great opportunity to go home on your own and kind of research that and get back together with your group, which I can allow for some time next time to say, hey, if you all want to get back into your groups, if one of you found an answer to one of the questions you had, because quite often, as probably happened in this group, small groups then often lead to more insight and more questions too. So would anyone like to share what their group discovered? Katty and Master G were working.
Well, we came up with some similarities and difference. We have difficulty with Taoism because Taoism by itself they believe in just live in accordance with the law of nature. Whatever nature comes, just take it and without fighting against it. So that's one of the difference from the 2 groups. As far as for political issues, all 3 groups actually they got involved in that. It's just for the Confucianism, they actively involved in political issues. Taoism, they do, but not very actively. Buddhism, they do involve, but the main goal is to teach, to teach them like the rules, how to rule their country, with loving kindness and compassion. As far as for Buddhism and Confucianism, they have one thing in common. It's like they believe in sacrificing themselves to save the others. Okay, that's Confucianism also. But for a different purpose, okay? For a different purpose. For like in Buddhism and Confucianism, they have something else in common. It's just like Tracy mentioned, the bondages within the family group. Okay, you might think that Buddhism, it's, you know, they encourage renunciation. You know, renounce from the worldly life to a homeless life. But if we look at the sutra, in the sutra, I forget the English name of the sutra, but in Chinese it's called San Sen Jing. Okay, it's one of the sutra that it's telling, you know, how the family should treat each other. Okay, anybody can enlighten me with that sutra, but there is one. Okay, I can find that out in English. Also, Confucianism, it of course emphasizes on the relationship with, you know, the emperor and subjects or subordinates, or with their boss, father and son, brothers or siblings. What else? Oh, the one common thing that is both Taoism and Confucianism, they are, you know, Chinese tradition. They originated in China. Taoism more believing in the everlasting life. They believe that, you know, after that there is a everlasting life. Buddhism believe in just, you know, come out of the samsara of rebirth. So morality, it's more closer for Buddhism and Confucianism. I think both Confucianism and both Buddhism and Taoism, they have one thing in common: is the supra-mundane practice. Now, the thing in common for as far as for that regard is Buddhism and Confucianism. They both, you know, start with the mundane level. You know, come into and help people at this present time.
Anyone else want to share anything they discovered with their group? I'm not so worried if you don't share out, because I noticed every single group, every single person shared, which is so wonderful. Any questions? Does anyone have questions within their group that they want to go back and research so I can give you time next time? No?
I have a question, but not related to the group.
Sure.
Okay.
I had read somewhere that Taoism and Buddhism fought with one another like a rivalry during some part of history. Is that true?
I
Just
just
a debate, actually, that kind of went, you know, leaning towards the Buddhist leaning, but
I had read that too, that there were quite a few debates throughout time. I didn't hear of any one war or anything, but I know there are quite a few debates. And I'm trying to remember, I read somewhere else that, I don't want to say it. I'll post it on the blog. I don't fully know if what I'm saying is completely accurate, so I don't want to say it yet. I'm going to be like those American Indians and hesitate what I'm saying. But it is something important to that. Now, last time when someone had asked this question, Master Jiru had given Caddy some information for me to look up, which I did, on the Northern Dynasty, which was in one of the dynasties in China. And he had known ahead of time that there actually was a dynasty that complemented both Buddhism and Taoism. With, you know, talking about how it seems like they did not have a lot in common. This was actually a dynasty that did find that they had some things in common. It's known as a very turbulent time. There was a lot of civil war and political chaos, but they also say it was a very flourishing time for arts, cultures, technology, and both Mahayana Buddhism and Taoism were spreading and quite often compared, which might have also been where the conflicts were coming up, that that we've all heard of.
Can I ask something?
Oh, of course.
The conflicts, or what's so-called the conflicts among or between Taoism and Buddhism, basically they are fighting for supports from the government.
Oh, that's it. Thank you for adding that. That's an excellent point. And then at the time of this dynasty, Confucianism was greatly weakened. It was looked at more as an ethical, but they weren't focusing it so much on a spirituality per se. And I think this is so true with so many of the researches that I'm doing. I think what happens is we go back to something that we know to explain something that's not as well known. Does that make sense at all? How we were saying when Buddhism first came to China, they had to do a lot of comparisons, so people can understand. So this was happening as well. There were Buddhist monks who were using what was familiar to the people, which was Taoism, to explain Buddhism. So that's where a lot of that would blend in together as well. Any questions? Did you guys like the small group? You like? Okay, good. That's something I want to do for quite a few of the sessions, at least until everyone feels like they have a good knowledge of each other. So next time we will do a small group as well, but try to get into different groups. Okay? All right, thank you guys so much.